Actually, this workshop will be centered around Drawsocket. You know, Maxscore is just one application of many possible applications. I just wanted to mention that.
And Drawsocket, of course, is one of many applications of Maxscore as well.
So there's a little overlap, and that's what we're going to talk about. The overlap of these two fairly large projects.
So I see a lot of familiar faces. So I guess probably a lot of you already know a little bit about both projects. But just as a little background, Maxscore was developed by Garrick Haiju and Nick Dikovsky, which is a Max-based score environment for algorithmic. Okay. And Drawsocket was developed for a large project in the Sempali Elbe Tunnel in 2019. I think.
It started in 2018 when we already knew that we were going to do this.
And I have actually, so some of these slides you'll see also in my Symbolist presentation, but here's a picture of the original concert that we made Drawsocket for. And so Drawsocket is, actually, let me see. So, sorry, here we go, right. So for this concert in the Sempali Elbe Tunnel, there were 144 musicians, and each musician had a iPad that would display their part. So it was like a large orchestra, although not the typical instrument numbers. And the audience, as you can see in the picture, would walk through these tunnels. In Hamburg, there's the Sempali Elbe Tunnel is, I believe, oh yeah, it says here, is 432 meters long. And there's two tunnels that are parallel. So we had in total almost a kilometer of space that the people were walking through. So each musician was spaced 6 meters apart, and they were all connected to the same Wi-Fi network. And Drawsocket is a server, a node.js server that creates a WebSocket connection with each instructions for each tablet individually. And then we used a animation plugin called GSAP, Green Socket Animation Platform, maybe, and synchronized the scrolling of the scores through each piece. And so we had a system where we could refresh the views for the next piece, and then start with a synchronized performance. And it works surprisingly well. Here's a little demo. So these are different, so it runs in the browser. And you can see here just an example of the synchronized scores. So we had a lot of iPads, very many iPads. And I think I took out, oh yeah, so then later, I took out, there's a little demo of the walking through the tunnel, but during the pandemic, we then made some experiments. There was it was called what was the Digital Stage Initiative? was that the name of the?
Yeah, Digital Stage.
So the Digital Stage Initiative was this German-funded project that was involving a lot of different Hochschulen for working on networked rehearsal using audio and video exchange. So I made some experiments also for this project called HFNT Live that also included video and audio into Drawsocket, but that's still very beta. So the general functionality of Drawsocket is that it's running a server, a standard HTTP server and the WebSocket server. And OSC messages are received from somewhere, usually Max, and then the messages are broadcast to the different clients. And I'm just going to jump over now to the paper from 2019, just to give you a lower level view. So here, can you see my mouse? Yeah, okay. So the server is running in node.js, and it was designed to run, so it runs usually as in the node script object in Max, but actually it can run independently of Max. It can run with, for instance, with PD or another software, and just run at the command line as a standalone server. And so the way it works is that there's a certain API, a message structure for drawing messages that it then broadcasts to the clients. And so in the server, there's the WebSocket, and I'll not go into detail into everything here, but basically there's a default web page that Drawsocket displays. So when you log in, you see a page, and then let's go ahead and start looking at it. And I'll take you through, I'm just doing a little presenting here, but actually I would like to take everybody through installing it, and so that we can use it on, it's more fun if you have it on your computers. And also we have a network in here, so we can actually send messages to each other and stuff like that. So essentially, Drawsocket, I'm wondering what the most simple would be to do this. All right, so I'm just going to go to a new page. And is that pretty easy to read, or should I make it bigger? All right, so I'll explain what this is in a minute. So if you've ever used the node script object in Max, you'll recognize these messages. So Drawsocket is an abstraction that has the node script object inside. So you hit script start, and it loads, it starts up a server. So now there's a server running in the background after hitting start. And here out of the right outlet, I'm looking at this with I'm using the ODot library from SynMat, and this is a ODot display object. And this is a ODot compose object. I'll explain again a bit more in a minute. So once you've started the server, you can then go to either one of these references to the server. So one is the local host, because it's running on my own computer. Localhost is a special name that means that it should look at the special port on your computer. And also, you can use this IP address for anyone that's on the same network as I am. You can paste in this this address here. This is the IP address, followed by colon, followed by the port number. And so if you paste in this IP address to a browser, it brings you to this welcome to Drawsocket page. You can also, so that's the basic entry to Drawsocket, but what you do is basically you add a slash to the end of that, and then you put any name that you would like to identify your computer with. So I'm just going to say Rama. And once you load into Drawsocket, flash of blue where it says synchronizing, and then you have just this plain white page. So that's good. That means that's working. And then Then you can send messages to, sorry, I have a lot of windows open. All right, so here's our Drawsocket window. And this could be on anything that's on this network. And then here, this is a OSC bundle. And it's very similar. There's two different representations of it. But the main one we're going to be using is the o.compose version, which looks a lot like JSON. If you've ever used JSON, it's almost the same as JSON, except that it has slashes for the variable names. So if you send, so the format is that you address messages to the URLs that you want to address, or you can use the star to address all clients at the same time. For now, I'm just going to send it to myself. And then there's some, then there's a key and a val. The key, there's a few different, okay, rewind. So Drawsocket is essentially a wrapper for the browser. So it's essentially creating just a messaging a direct mapping from OSC to web format. So for instance, HTML, SVG, CSS, JavaScript, and some other plugin. There's also Tone.js in Drawsocket, which allows you to make sound and so on. So the key in the message tells Drawsocket what type of, how it should handle this information that you're sending. And then the val is a set of parameters, attributes that will be used to perform some operation. And there's a couple of keywords. So one is new, that means to create a new element. And then usually it's a direct mapping to whatever the type is. So here's a SVG circle. Okay, maybe I should have just showed you the circle. Ta-da, here's a blue circle. That's not blue, that's green, sorry. Okay, there we go. So yeah, so that's pretty exciting. And if there was another tab here, that was like also Rama. Actually, I forget if you can use uppercase. I think you can. You can see that it sends the same thing to both of them. And
Rama, I have a question.
Yeah.
You're online, right? Aren't you?
I am online.
So maybe all the participants could actually also see these circles on their computers?
Maybe.
When they're
You could try. I don't know. I'm on the school network. We could see if this works. Yeah, try going to this IP address. So it's.
Or maybe you can use the router.
Yeah, that's true. So I wanted to.
I can see that.
I wanted to. Okay, and I can switch back to this later. I'm online so that I can show you how to install it. Because you do have to be online to install Drawsocket. But in the meantime, there's a router up here that is not connected to the internet, but is open. And if you go to Polytempo, is the name of the server.
You can also use a cell phone.
Yep, you can log in with any device, cell phone, iPad, computer. I think I have to. Oh yeah, so no, I think I have to stop the server if I change the network. That's could have been a good test. Okay, so now my IP address, if you're on the Polytempo network, can log into this IP address. Just type this in like that, and then add a slash and your colon, excuse me, port 3002,
It's not allowing access for the thing.
Oh, really?
Does it work for you? Me too, yeah. Yes. That's only problem. Content is finished.
I don't know. Oh, oops.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Anyway,
I should have saved that. I'm gonna stop and restart and then save this. Ah, crap. Right. Ah. All right, stop logging in for a second. Oh wait, I know what I can do. I can do this. So the problem with O.display is made for it doesn't allow you to store things in it, whereas O.compose does. So I'm going to restart the server again and now copy that. So now when you log in, it won't change that, and that should work. Okay, so you should see a green circle on your. Yay! Great. So exciting. So we're done. That's basically it. Oh, here's something fun. Okay, so this is, I'm going to copy this. Right. And I believe, so now I'm going to add a animation. Wait, ID target circle. All right, so this will be target Stevie. And did that do anything? Just a green circle?
It's paused.
Oh yeah, true. No, but it says ID. Oh, bouncy start. All right, clear. Create Stevie. Oh,
Duration is one.
it should work.
1 second.
All right. So another really cool thing about working in the browser is you can go to the developers tools. So if you're in Chrome, for instance, you can go to View, Developers Tools, and this gives you a whole bunch of menus, and there's a console, and here I can see that it says GSEP target Stevie not found. So that's a problem. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to inspect the source here. I'm going to click on that circle, and it says here the ID. Oh, yeah. Could be.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks, James. Woohoo! Right, so the target is using a CSS selectors. So, for instance, if we had a bunch of different balls that we wanted to bounce, that sounds funny. You could also target all of a certain class type. But anyway, just to show you some basic functionality. So I think if I recreate it, it will stop bouncing, yeah. So what should we talk about now? I guess I'll show you the help patch. Should I take you through installing it? Or do you want to more see what it does first? Anybody? Anybody?
What it does.
What it does, okay. Okay, cool. So yeah, like I said, it's really about dynamically creating content. So I explained already a little bit about the internet again, just so I can show you some online stuff. So it's possible that you might get disconnected from the server. All right, so I'm going to log in. I think this is working. So then if I go back, okay, there it was. Yeah, good. So let's just talk a little bit more about what you can draw with, for instance, with the SVG key name in Drawsocket. So inside this val object, so this is called an object when you have these curly braces. Right, sorry. So to talk about this format a little bit. So the first, each one of these curly braces creates a kind of a packet or an object. So the first one, in this case, is called foo. The colon means that the thing after it is attached to that name. So here we have foo has this thing attached to it. And this thing is an object. And inside that object are a whole bunch of other things that are comma separate. Is SVG, comma, then val, and val is another object. And inside val says new circle. So circle is a type of SVG element. And then we have the parameters that we're passing to the circle. And so what's going on here is that it's great, yeah, and it's in the help file. So what it's doing is it's making an SVG node, and I'm directly mapping these messages to the vanilla SVG specification. So, for instance, a circle in SVG has, you can set at an ID, but the primary elements that you need are the CX, CY, and R parameters. And all of that information is available online and many places. And so basically you can use any SVG that you want. And so like, for instance, here you say, okay, I want to make a circle. So you could, if you're just learning SVG, you could say, okay, and use the Mozilla documentation is really good. And here, there's this outer wrapper of SVG, which Drawsocket handles for you. So the main thing is the object commands. So if there's some shape you want to draw in SVG, you could just go to the documentation and you can say, okay, I need CX, CY, and R. So then if we go back to Drawsocket, separated values that go directly to creating a SVG object. You can also make lists of objects. So here we can send multiple objects at the same time. I'm going to start this server. Oh, right. I'm going to stop this one, start this one. And then here, go back to here. Okay. You can see I just made these concentric circles. So one was already present, and then I just added an orange and a yellow circle. And to make a list, you can use the square brackets and have a list of objects, and each one will happen sequentially. One of the features of Drawsocket is that it has a cache, it has a memory for each URL in the server. So whatever messages you send to the URL, when somebody logs into that URL, it should load the latest version of all of the messages you sent. So for instance, if I came messages. Now, I had restarted the server a minute ago, which is why the green circle is now missing, because the green circle was sent before I restarted the server, so the cache was deleted, and now we have new cache. So that's an important thing also, is that if your server is not running, you have no memory. So, and if you restart the server, it's not, it doesn't have a memory. You can load in files from disk like if you want to start your system for a piece and automatically have everything loaded for each page. That's easy to do. You can store it in a dictionary, and when you load, you just get all data right away, and then everybody can log into their URLs, and it works. Right, and another aspect of working with SVG is that oftentimes it's useful to have layers. So if you have, and there's a couple ways to do that. So the use for that would be, for instance, if you have an overlay that you want certain objects to always be on top of a background image, you can set your background image, and then you set a second layer and only update things in that layer. It will always maintain the position in the stacking order. So just to show you what that means a little bit more clearly, the stacking order is determined by the order of messages. If you want to be able to write to different Z depths, Z layers, a handy method is to pre-create your drawing layers with G objects. G objects in SVG are group objects. And so they don't have any visual information by themselves. They're just containers for other drawings. So, right, and there's also this parent message. Actually, in this case, the parent message is not really necessary because okay. All right, so I'm going to also explain. So by default, there are 3 layers that exist in Drawsocket by default. One is for HTML elements, one is for SVG elements, and one is for HTML elements that is always the top layer. So this is for things that you want to have clickable. If you want the user to be able to click or touch elements in the display, that needs to be on the top layer. Otherwise, it's hidden from, it gets blocked by other elements in the stack. So you can use the parent. And so here it says parent main SVG. If we go back to this layer description, we can see that the main SVG is here. This isn't actually the default layer. So that's why I was saying you didn't actually need to didn't need to say parent there, but you can. It's just by default, everything goes in the main SVG container. But maybe in this example, it's clearer if we don't do that. And so what I do here is I'm saying create 3 new group objects and call the first one back, the second one main, and the third one overlay. And so because we're using the square brackets here, the order of these messages is consistent. It will always be 1, 2, 3 in that order. So we've created the back, main, and overlay. So then here, we can start adding elements to these different layers. So for instance, in this first bundle, we say SVG, I'll just click it first. So we say SVG parent back. So that means put this element into the back layer. Then we say new rect. We give it an ID, some information about drawing. And then in the overlay, we draw a light gray circle. Now, actually, you know, the order is important, but if we reverse this order, so even if we just sent the overlay in that order, it would actually draw it in that order. It's like a table. Like if you have something, you put one thing down, you put another thing on top of it, you put another thing on top of that. It's just the order going from bottom to top. So the way it's written right now actually would be the same as the layers anyway. So, but then let's try to just change the order here so I can show that, for instance, so I'm just going to clear everything. Oh, right, clear yeah. Right, so now I'm going to recreate the group objects because I just hit clear. And now I hit this button and you can see it looks exactly the same, but I'm drawing them in a different order. So actually, if we had not, if, for instance, the back was in the middle layer, this black square would make it impossible to see the pink circle. And then you can add layers, you can add elements anytime you want to these different grouping layers. And then you can also, for instance, clear from the other drawings. You can also edit objects by referring to them by their IDs. So, like for instance, down here, I just changed the radius of the circle and the Y position of the clef by changing just the Y. So I say ID clef Y70. Because that object already exists, we can manipulate one attribute at a time if you want. So then, because also it's in a browser, we have, of course, access to all technologies that are in browsers. So we have CSS. So for instance, here, I create two CSS rules. And this is using CSS naming. So the selector for a class in CSS starts with a dot. So we say dot open. And for that class in CSS, we say that there's a stroke of black, stroke width of 2 and not filled. And then there's a closed class, which is filled black. And then when we create, then we can drawing rules for those class types. So that's very handy. And you can add, you can override elements as well. There's an order in CSS. I mean, there's lots of stuff to learn about web display. It's very complicated. I'm still totally learning about CSS. It's very, it can be very annoying sometimes. I might skip. So we go until 1 o'clock, right? Yeah. Okay. You can also define symbols similar to CSS rules. Like you can define an SVG element and then use it. For instance, here you can create a whole bunch of. So this is a way to quickly generate. Like you can. I cleared. So okay. So if you clear everything, you clear all messages that you send. So I just cleared the definition that I made. So this example didn't work. So I'm going to hit clear. I'm going to define a definition. So the definition is a group a line, and a circle. I think I actually have to say stroke.
Stroke.
Oh, thank you. I'm stoked about it though. Okay, that, and then, so now that I've defined the ID note line, I can very quickly generate, I don't have to rewrite this all the time, and it will translate the symbol based on the X and Y position, because it's contained in a group object, so the group object can be moved around. And so the positions of the child elements are relative to the group itself. And so then when you create new symbols or new graphic elements using the use, this is again a straight SVG feature. The use tag refers to an element in the depths, SVG depths, and you can read all about this in the SVG documentation. Please just yell out questions at me if you have them. I'm not in a huge hurry to get through the help file. Yeah.
When you talked about the tunnel example,
Mhm.
is this then that you had more? Or you had those files somewhere and you were pulling those into the browser?
Yes, so there's a few different ways to do this. The way I worked was to, we're going to stop the other server. Oh, one thing to know is that a server you can only run one server on a given port at a time. So I'm going to stop this server so that I can start in this help patch here. Start, refresh. Oh, sorry. Stop. Do I have another one open? Oh, right. Sorry. I have this one open as well. Okay, here we go. There we go. Clear. Duck. Yep. So the way I worked for the tunnel piece was to I make my scores in Adobe Illustrator and then export as SVG and strip the parts in that way. So I will separate each. I put all the different instruments in different layers in Illustrator, and then for each layer, then that I have to reformat it a little bit, and so then I create a set of drawing commands that creates one like this. So you just scroll it. I think it's a little jumpy right now. I think that's because of the, why is that? It should be very smooth. So there's something weird going on right now. But yeah, so basically that's way I worked. And in Maxscore, Gerard made a export system, which he'll be showing in a little bit, for making scores in Maxscore, and then he can render directly to the browser in Maxscore, and also has the Drawsocket commands built into Maxscore to control the scrolling, and also moving the playhead without scrolling, right? That's very cool. But there's also other pieces that we had in the program. For instance, we had a piece by Kat Hope and Lindsay Vickery. Is that, I think that's, who are using the decibel score player for their ensemble. And so we supported their pieces by basically taking a similar approach that they use, which is to tile the JPEGs but instead of the decibel score player app, we use Drawsocket. So basically you just take one after another, or I guess from your perspective, it'd be this way. So one after another, and into one long score, into one group object. And then we animate the group object, which contains all of these, with the playhead, and then just slowly, yeah. So pretty similar. But of course, these are arbitrary animations. Like, that's just because we decided for this concert we wanted to do a linear scrolling score. It's just a browser with animations. So you can really, I'd like to see like what I'm trying to remember who's the, there's there's tons of interesting animated notation. Who am I thinking? Who's the American composer who's now working with Cat?
Ryan Ross.
Yeah, Ryan Ross Smith's work, for instance. I would love to see. I was thinking of maybe trying to implement some of his scores in Drawsocket just as an experiment. But yeah, so it's really flexible. Yeah.
How much is precise between
Well, it's not bad. So what's happened?
for example,
Yeah, it's surprisingly not bad. I mean, it is a network, so there's always going to be some issues with latency depending on. In the tunnel, what we did for these scrolling is I made a. So there, okay, in Drawsocket there are generally it's direct mapping to these different libraries. So there's SVG, HTML, CSS, blah blah blah. But there are some times when I added an extra little helper thing. And so one is that for animations, there's a special command you can use, which I think you can see here it says CMD. So these are special like helper functions, and some of these have a system where when the client receives the play message, it checks the timestamp of the time it was sent, and checks its current clock time. And there's a synchronized. It's using the time sync library. So each client knows approximately how far off it is from the server clock, and so then it calculates how late it is, and then jumps ahead into the animation to try to synchronize as best as possible. But with 144 people in the orchestra, I decided to so I would do a new time sync only at the beginning of each piece, instead of running like by default, I think it checks every like 100 milliseconds or something. It's ridiculous. And it's sending like messages back and forth to every, I'm sure some of you have more advanced understanding of synchronization and traffic that you could probably help me with this. But, and actually I am interested I was talking with Greg Bello recently. I guess there's some new library coming out from Aircam.
Soundworks.
Yeah.
Soundworks you can achieve sound precise synchronization.
Yeah. So I'm interested to, this time sync system here is pretty simple. But now that the system is functioning, and I'm definitely interested to potentially add support for a more robust synchronization library.
But I can report that in the local network, the synchronization, I have used this for rhythmic music, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, you couldn't tell, that there are deviations. But the thing is, musicians also kind of not only kind of react to the display, but they also react to each other. So there's another layer of synchronization happening right there, which compensates maybe for small differences. But the differences are really negligible. It really depends. I think the decisive factor is the quality of your connection to the router. If you have a router in a different room, of course you're going to have some latency. But if you have a very good good system running and you're close to the router. And we had in the tunnel, we noticed that the signal was carrying very far. So, but still we had a lot of redundant access points so that none of the musicians were standing further away than say 100, no, less than that, but 60 meters from another access point, which also gave us a high fidelity connection.
But yeah, it is definitely highly dependent on the industrial space that had like super thick walls, I guess, and he only had one router and they were spread really far apart, and he was calling me like, it's not connecting, and like, I mean, I don't know, it's you really have to have a good connection, and it does take like, it takes testing and trying it out too. I think with any networks system, you can't just walk into a room and assume it's just going to work. You have to be ready to, or pre-prepare as much as you can so that when you get there that you should work. Yeah.
So it wouldn't be enough to do the same Wi-Fi IP address.
Well, it depends on, for instance, if you're connected to a school network that's also on the internet, it could really slow down messages. But yeah, it depends. I don't really know. It's hard to answer.
You have to try.
You just have to try it. It's always going to be different depending on the devices, depending on the router, depending on the interference from other things that are in the room. Like lights can sometimes cause conflicts.
So it's better to have
Definitely. The best would be a hardwired cable, actually.
But
Isn't it more simple just to have some video of the score
Ah,
on many old machines, and this only be done on any machine?
yes, video is possible as well. It's a little funky because there's a bunch of this might work. There's a lot of security things. So for instance, I think I haven't clicked on this page yet. So if I hit play, it's not going to work. So you have to, all browsers have prevent pop-up windows from automatically playing videos. Probably a good thing, I guess. So now if I click on the screen, it will start playing. And you can, I also added this experimental video start with sync, which is using that same method to try to calculate how far off it is. You can also jump to different points in the video.
And the video could be hosted on the internet,
It has to be hosted somewhere.
on the device or internet device.
Yeah, it should work. It should work if it's on this computer. I think you have to test it and probably want to make sure that it's a pretty low resolution file, I guess, because then everybody has to download it. So it's probably okay if you're on a local network, but if it's like a 10 gigabyte file, it's still going to take a little while for the device, even if there's no internet, it's just directly from here to here. It's going to take a little time for it to download the video. So I would say it's definitely doable, and for some cases that's probably the easiest solution. But I lean more towards the sort of vector graphic solution because it's much more lightweight and it's quite high resolution, and it doesn't require so many security constraints and stuff. Jean, did you have a question?
About this video thing, Jonathan,
Yeah.
It's one of the organizers. The whole system which is based on video streams. And I think at the last demo was comparing the two.
Oh yeah, right.
He was comparing the function between performance and.
Was he comparing?
Or he compared different systems.
Yes.
How to stream video and be synchronized.
Yeah, he ended up, I think he was sending, instead of worrying, so for synchronization, I think he's sending current time. If there's audio, if you jump to a different point, you know, it might click.
My question was more practical, like why do you need to have these /* before any
Because it's addressing a client. And so the /* is addressing all clients. And so it's just a fast way to do that. I could actually do o.pack /* and then get rid of that. And then it would, you just send everything to everyone if you want to do that.
So you don't send to the server?
Yeah, I send to the server, but which client are you sending it to? Because part of the idea is that you can send individual messages to everyone if you want. So everyone could have a different video, but then you could hit the send the same start message to everyone.
So that the first layer where it's starting, so by convention is where it's the target video.
Exactly. Yep.
So,
You ready?
it's, I'll give you another 5 minutes if you want, need to.
No, I mean, we haven't even scratched the surface.
That's the problem.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff here. This is fun. All right, I'm gonna clear. Oh, yeah, of course you can load it in. Send messages back to Max through callback functions. So you can have full user, you know, you could have, this could be like an interface as well. That's pretty cool. You can, yeah, there's a lot of stuff. You can make functions. A lot of stuff. Let's see, Drawsocket. Oh, this is a fun one. All right, so this one, all right, I'm going to close this guy. I'm going to show one more thing, Garrick, and then it's all yours. So this was something that was really handy and during the tunnel project, which was to create a chat system so that since some of the clients were like 400 meters away, there was no way to communicate with them. So I made a little chat system so that individual users could send us message saying, oh wait, don't start the piece yet, I just broke a string or something, you know, or and so basically there's an event listener. And so that will send a message to the server. And then you can make your own format here, but I just made one here that's input, and then it has a message and the URL, which is the user that sent the message. So here I'm going to send a message, say, are you ready to start? And so it shows up here. No! Okay, sorry. Et cetera, et cetera. That's super useful to have feedback from people. And one more thing. Close that. All right, Garrick, it's almost yours. Sorry, I lied. I'm going to show one more thing, which is, so here you can see it has all of the mouse information and stuff like that. So you can do full interfaces. And then finally, if you're not happy with that, you can also include, you can edit the page itself, the HTML page, and you can add your own JavaScript directly in the HTML. You can create your own custom page and have your own libraries of other JavaScript functions, include Drawsocket and other products. There's also a Drawsocket npm package that you can use in other projects as well. Okay, so with that, I'll hand over the mic to Garrick.
So, thanks. Yeah, I think so. Okay, great. So everyone is seeing the screen now, and so hello, everybody. So I'm going to show you an application of Drawsocket. Drawsocket has kept me pretty busy over the past like 4 years. It also prompted me to rewrite large portions of Maxscore. It basically became a different environment. And I'm still in the process of implementing various aspects which I find useful. So just to give you a quick idea of what Maxscore is, I'm going to quickly open element of a component of it called bcanvas, which draws a score in the patcher window. And so may I ask who's not familiar with Maxscore or needs a little introduction to that? Right, so Maxscore, as Rama pointed out, is a application that's based on JMSL. JMSL is the Java Music Specification Language developed by Nick Ditkovsky, which is based on HMSL, which was used to be the let me remember what the H part stood for, but it's something that was around in the 1990s, and a lot of musicians used HMSL. Larry Polanski, for instance, was one of the fathers of HMSL. And so then he, when HMSL disappeared, which I guess ran mainly on the Amiga computer, he recreated this environment in Java and also included a notation environment. So in 2007, I commissioned the Maxscore as a Java object in Max. And we've been co-developing this object ever since. Now Maxscore is a wrapper around the actual Max Java object here. The the user that may or may not want to look into the innards of this abstraction. So Maxscore has various incarnations. It either comes as this abstraction or it comes as a full-blown editor here, which really implements the functionality of a music editing program. You have the palettes here. You have a pitch utility which does a lot with its various entry tools, like for instance on the Scala browser implemented as a database. You have a plugin system called Scorpions and a drawing system called Pixter, which differs from which is the main difference from Bach, which is also a very powerful environment in Max, but doesn't support graphics to the extent Maxscore does. Also want to give credit to James Chung, who is sitting next to my friend Tony Dourides, who's going to be hosting the next conference next year in Boston. So James was also instrumental in implementing something that we call expressions. Expressions are code that is attached to graphical objects. So see here the display of a score that's not mine, but I love Lindsay Vickery's, and Rama has already mentioned his name. His scores, they're always a piece of art, so very appealing. So I chose one of his Decibel Score Player scores to, for this workshop today. And I also want to point out that the Kat, who's also here at the conference, and Lindsay and a bunch of other people from Australia have designed this tool called Decibel Score Player, which is a fantastic and a lightweight scrolling, how should I put it, a device that enables the scrolling of scores, synchronized scrolling between iPads. And so it's become immensely popular because it's really easy to use. What I set out was just to create, and it was one of the premises of the Turner network that Sandeep Bhagwati started a few years ago, is to bring people together and to create compatibility, layers of compatibility, so that we can exchange scores between environments. And so one of the things that I was paid attention to was to make sure that I have compatibility that I can import a Bach score into Maxscore and further process it. For instance, send it to Drawsocket. But I guess Bach also supports the export of PNGs, so it's so that part is not as pressing as it used to be. Well, but let me show you a little bit how to deal with a Decibel Score Player. A score, this piece is called Kuronami, and what's nice about it is, and that's why I chose it, it also contains an AIF file. So it's not just the scrolling of a score, but you can have a sound file which also plays in sync with the score. And so what I'm going to show you today is how to import this piece, Kuronami, into Maxscore, and then use that to play back to scroll the score, and to also play back the audio file on handheld devices, any handheld device. So that's also a distinction between the Decibel Score Player and Maxscore, is that due to Drawsocket, it actually runs on any browser. Therefore, we don't need additional software on our devices. To the Scorpion here, and what I did is I hacked the Decibel Score Player DSC file format, because that's really just a zip file. So all you need to do is to just replace DSC, which is a file that you create when you use the decibel score, I guess it's called, it's like an uploading application that, let me see, if I go to, I have it on my, in my applications folder, and remind me, it's called Score Creator. So if the Score Creator will create a DSC file, upload that to iPad. So in order to get to the content, you just simply replace a DSC with zip, right? The extension, you change the extension, and then you unpack it. And then that's how you get to the files. And I'm going to quickly go there, grow. And so this is the folder which I unpacked, and it contains the sound file, it contains an Opus file, it contains preferences, and it contains a bunch of JPEGs which are Maxscore. I can open a project, which is my unzipped DSC file. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing just to show you how it works. I'm going to select this folder, click on open, and this will then read in the score name, the composer's name, the duration of the score, and then there's other parameters which are set to 0 here. And so this already is enough information which enables me to import all the files into Maxscore. And if I click on create, well, you didn't see it because it was already loaded into the window, but I can create a new score and then click on create, and you'll see that the score was imported. But not only that, but what we can also see is that an expression was created from the information given, and I'm now using Pixter, which is the graphics layers of Maxscore. Maybe give you a quick overview of Pixter. So if I go here, I can create a new score. I can create a few events by either double clicking or control clicking on so you can either attach an element to a note, or to a staff, or to a measure. And the measure includes all staves. So what we're going to do is, for simplicity's sake, we're just going to create a line here, which you can select and move around. But you can also, instead of just or an SVG file, or groups, and you can actually do this also by sending messages. So, for instance, here, let me just quickly send a message that sends a path to this, attaches a path to this node here. As you can see here, now where it's a demo how you can actually you use graphics, and also thanks to Rama, we also adopted the Drawsocket format, although it's not really communicating with the server, but we're using the same format. So then when we communicate with the server, we don't have to do any conversion. That's that. And let me just go back to the file score here. As you can see now, you can see, probably not clearly, but it's kind of reddish now because by Pixter tool, I have to press caps lock. Caps lock takes me to the Pixter tool. I can edit all the graphics elements with caps lock. So in other words, I can select an element, and if I press E on the element, you can see now that you see there's an image here. That's the first one of the from the folder. It also has a specification about its width, its height, whether a transform is being applied or not, and some extra information which is not relevant now. And as you can see here, here's an expression. And I just noticed yesterday that I was using a version of Max 8.3, which had no support for MP3. So I wonder whether you guys whether the official version 8.3 still has no support for MP3s in the SF Play object, or did they put that back in? Do you guys have any idea? It works in 8.2 though, but unfortunately it doesn't work with the beta version that I was experimenting with. But anyway, no problem. I had saved into it. And so that's why I was able to now load the same score which I created in the editor and was able to save by using save score from the file menu. I was able to load this into a bcanvas object here, and as you can see, it's a very long file. And if I connect with my cell phone, then I can actually see the result of this. As you can see, I can scroll now through because I'm connected via Drawsocket to my to the server. So I can now load the entire score into a handheld device. But I think I should fill in some gaps here, because I think we're not quite ready for this demo. So what I want to show you here is the Drawsocket implementation. So what happens is I can have scores that, let's see, I'm going to create a new score here. And I'm going to add some notes. And now, in order to make a scrollable score, I need to convert this score into a few chords as well, maybe a held note here. And so I'm going to click on Set Proportional Notation, and you can now see that Bach score transformed into a Bach roll object, so to speak, right? So it's like you can transform the display of a score in standard notation into the display of the same score in proportional notation. And now this score can now scroll I can click on scroll start. As you can see, it's now scrolling. I can stop that. I can rewind. I can offset it. And let's see, I can offset to any position in the score. And I can start from that by just clicking on scroll resume. And I'm going to start now. Stop. Also, what's nice is when you want to do real-time part extraction, you can simply define staff groups. So, in other words, let's assume I have a scenario in which I have like maybe an ensemble of 5 players, but also conductor. I would like the conductor to see the entire is I can say, okay, I have a staff group 1 consisting of staves 0, 1, 2, 3, because I always start the numbering at 0, and the second client will only see staff 1 or staff 0. The third client will still see staff 2. And so the syntax is very simple. You just have staff groups and you define the staves that people are looking at. So if I send the message staff group parts, in this particular case, I assume that there's no conductor that needs to see all the parts at once, so that when you log in with /1, you see the top part. So we can do this. I can demonstrate this. I'm just going to click on parts, and in Max, actually, you will see the staff that you specify. In this particular case, it's the first staff. So I'm going to go back to staff group 0. And recently, Nick Collins, who has done these beautiful room tone variations, complained and said, "Well, but the score looks kind of small when you display it on my iPad." And I said, "Okay, now let me add a new feature, and now it's called Symbolist, that will allow you to individually use a smaller zoom size compared to someone who has an iPad Pro and with a large screen estate." Okay, so I think we're also slowly running out of time. Could have talked for another hour and a half, I suppose. And here's something that people might find useful. There's you can define an output, because you can actually also send the output not just to the canvas, not just to the server, but also to jitter matrix. So in case you want to do something like this here. So I'm going to create this score here, my favorite score. I'm going to turn on JIT world. I'm going to now I have the output, the jitter output also enabled. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to, we should probably see, and I suspect I screwed something up recently because I don't see the score. So I will skip this part and do some troubleshooting today. But what I wanted to show you is that we have like circular scores, and if you start scrolling them, you also should see the notation. But now we're only seeing the lines for the ruler. But anyway, so let's go back to to our core. The B patcher or the B canvas, and we're ready to scroll the score automatically. And if we had a little more time, I would say log into my server. The server IP is, so I can give it to you if you're interested. Maybe yeah. Let's take a few minutes to also look into that. So what I can do is I can stop the server and restart it, or I just go to the network preferences and look up the address here, and it's 10.0.1.6 on the network. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the scrolling. And as you can also hear, we're also hearing a sound file. You will probably won't hear the sound file on your devices because I haven't. Pardon me?
Similar to the issue with the video.
Right.
Click the screen before the browser will allow you to put sound.
That's right. And not only that, but I also have to upload the sounds to your devices, which is not automatic. Because if you have a large file, and I want you guys to also to play synchronous. This, I have developed an object called JS Tone.js SF Play, which plays sound files on handheld devices, in browsers. So that's what we were hearing. We were hearing a browser playing back the sound file synchronously or in synchrony with the scrolling of the score. So it basically replicates the functionality of the decibel score player. But I also want to show you something else as we are slowly coming to an end, and maybe you also have a few questions, so I'm going to speed up a little. If you have a conventional score and you would like to have a distributed performance where people are maybe in different rooms and listening to sounds or being cued, you can. I'm planning to have a performance soon with a choir singing in the bowl and pewter scale, which is a microtonal scale, which I have spent quite some time working with. And so in order to play back music in the browser, microtonal music, a Maxscore sampler, which does exactly that. So I can, in Maxscore, if you have that installed on your computer, you go to paste from Maxscore playback, and you pull up the sampler. And so in the sampler, you have an editor window, which you don't have in the Tone.js version of it. But you can create a bank and save the bank to your somewhere, and then import the bank into the Maxscore sampler, Tone.js sampler. And so as you can see in this particular case, we have two objects, two instruments for this particular bank, which I created just for the help file. And you have to make sure that all the resources are visible to the server. So they usually sit in a folder called public. Here, for instance, we have a, let me see, this public should be here. There it is. So this folder public needs to be relative to the patch, to the so therefore I have in this folder public, which is on the same level as the patcher file here. It's this one. And it contains all my resources. So images are being automatically copied to this file by a node.js script, but the samples need to be manually copied into this folder called public. So what you need is a folder with all the samples and a folder with instruments, but this is probably going to go away because James and I are working on a new format, a JSON-based format, which will no longer have separate instrument files. So that's bound to change in the future. Now, in the sampler, you can now select these two instruments, and maybe we should do this. If you go to this particular address, and have you been able to see the scores? The score? Not yet? You should be seeing this. The access point. It's called polytempo, the same as with.
And it's
0.1.6:3002/. /1. That's the address that you need to, that is, so you can actually choose between /1 and /2, because I will show you that the sounds that are being generated by the sampler for instrument 1 go to the first instance, to /1, and the other one to /2, so you can have sounds, different sounds for different browser windows. Well, anyway, there's one thing, as Rama pointed out, you need to tap on the window after you log in. You tap on the window. This will enable upload, and I will now upload the sounds to you.
Actually, will enable playback.
Right.
Because similar to videos, the browsers don't want to. It's a security risk to allow things to play automatically.
Okay. So I'm gonna upload this very quick here to you. Pardon me? Okay, I'm gonna display this very quick because it's 10.0.1.6:3002/1 here.
And I would just maybe, I know we're about to end, but I would say in concert situations, it's best to have everyone be on a unique address or unique URL, because anytime someone logs into a URL, it sends a request to the server to receive all of the messages. And so it actually sends it to everyone that's logged into that URL. So if everyone logs into the same URL, when a new person logs in, it's going to refresh the page again.
Right. So I'm going to upload.
There's probably a better, elegant thing to do for that, but that's the way it is for now.
I want you all to tap your windows. I'm going to upload the sounds, and if we're lucky, we can now hear for address 1, we can hear this note, and for address 2, we'll hear this note. Right. So there's you have to. You may, if you don't hear the notes now, I suppose that's a little finicky, actually. You have to refresh your page, then I will upload it, and then I will again, and then sometimes if we're lucky, we can hear the sound. So it is something that you have to do synchronously, and to make sure that you don't miss one of the elements in the sequence. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to the last thing is I'm going to create a little random music. I'm going to stop now because I think have come to an end.
Can you send the data one more time? Can you send load the audio file?
The audio file. I can load that? Yeah, upload. Yeah, and shall I play play notes?
There we go. Yeah, can you play the random music again?
What a random thing.
Pardon me?
Not all the notes are there.
No, well, because you have only probably logged into the instance 1. But if you have another browser window open with instance 2, then you will hear the other voice too. But it would be nice, of course, if you have 16 instances and everyone just logs into one page, and then you distribute people. You have instant like in 3D audio, right? Okay, so that's it for today. I suppose give you a little overview. Now, maybe we should take 3 more minutes for questions. Otherwise, I'll just
yeah. I mean, we have. I guess the next. ceremony or whatever, opening talk? Okay, there's a lunch? Here. Great.
You're in the cafeteria.
Okay. At 3. Okay, so there is time to eat. Okay, good. Yay, food.
What's it? Lunch is now?
Yeah, I think
Starting
so.
now?
But yeah, of course, we're still here and happy to answer any questions. Do you guys have any immediate questions? Or
I had a dumb user question. My Drawsocket thing says synchronizing. Possibly. Is this like a?
that means that you're not synchronizing. That means that you are not connected to probably the server is off.
Yeah, because I closed it.
But I'm trying it on the local host, just like in the.
So it could be that your server is not running. And that it's because once you've loaded the page, it tries to reconnect if it loses connection to the server. And then, so let's say you're on a phone and you have your page open and you walk out of the range of the router, and then you come back into the room, it will try to reconnect without having to hit refresh. I think probably your server is not loaded, or maybe you're so you're on localhost.
Yeah.
And maybe just check your server is running, and then
Like I clicked the start.
the IP address. Did you install? We didn't go.
You want to have
Do you wanna
look at this
Let's
computer.
come across the.
Yeah.
We're not online.
No, I did the yeah. Okay. And it was working.
So
when we
just hit. Refresh.
It was working when you were demoing everything. I logged on to
Because what you just did now, I think makes me imagine things like you have the audience, and they take the power of the platform, the people who are here, and then you have a kind of specialist music. And do you think you can take this section if the people accept it, like it's not you think we online turn on the sound of the device?
yeah.
I know, because I can imagine that people will just turn out the sound and they just ask them to access something, and after they don't know what
to be online to download
Right.
to install the npm package.
I mean, you can combine this with the forms.
So
You know,
But that
you
makes
accept
sense.
it for
yes,
non-phone
syntax
exception,
experience,
right? You can have like a do a lot of things. Yeah.
That's a good point. I thought that happened too.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for attending. Tony, are we going to have some lunch?
Do you guys ever?
Unfortunately, I have only about 20 minutes because then I have to
like
be.
these tools because they can go so deep. Do you guys ever do like
examination.
like
Oh, excuse me.